purpose of this video is to help you understand the purpose of a comparative genre analysis, or CGA, and to give you insights on how to move beyond describing similarities and differences among genres to drawing conclusions. And I'm going to model for you how you can use note-taking and planning to develop insights, analysis, and conclusions for your CGA. There are also some exercises and discussion questions in this video that should help prepare you for your next class. So a CGA prepares you for reading and dissecting unfamiliar kinds of writing in order to understand what writing is and what writing does. For instance, as an undergraduate, you're going to be asked to write in a range of disciplines. Different instructors are going to have different criteria and expectations for what good writing looks like. CGA helps prepare you for these differing expectations because it helps you learn how to analyze the text that you'll be using in classes and how to make decisions about what your writing needs to accomplish and do. When you go into the workplace, you're also going to encounter the need for this kind of skill. So, for instance, you might on a job be asked to write a case file or a trip report or a purchase justification or a press release. You want to analyze what other people have written, what's already been done in the new company or institution. Make sure that you're doing the right task, that you're doing what your readers expect and want. And the CGA helps prepare you for this kind of necessary pre-work. A good CGA does more than just note similarities and differences across genres. Doing that in and of itself isn't that hard. Instead, a good CGA makes educated guesses or draws conclusions or partial conclusions about why differences exist. And by identifying the reasons that lie behind differences, you can learn how to become a stronger writer by identifying the real purpose, the real motivation for some surface features in your writing. So let's illustrate by looking at two different kinds of texts. Here's an article from the popular magazine, The Atlantic Monthly. And this article is on internet gaming disorder. You'll notice that I'm looking at it on the web, that there are pictures, that there are advertisements because I'm looking at it on the web, relatively short paragraphs and some longer paragraphs throughout here. Now here's an article on the same topic, internet gaming disorder, in an academic journal called Computers and Human Behavior. And if we just glance through this, we see lots of sections, lots of citations. If we glance at it maybe a little bit more thoroughly, we'll notice maybe some technical language here, psychological constructs, words like conceptualization, some maybe technical jargon such as over-identification. And if we glance back at the Atlantic Monthly article, we don't see that same level of jargon, that same really difficult vocabulary. Although there are some citations, we don't see nearly as many as we did in the academic journal article. Now, these differences between the two aren't that hard to notice. And it should be relatively easy for you to make an argument, such as when you write an academic essay in a discipline like psychology, you should avoid pictures. You should cite lots of sources and use maybe a more advanced formal vocabulary that uses some psychology words or psychology jargon. But why? Why do these differences arise? Why should you necessarily do some of these features, implement some of these features? If we can better understand why the academic article uses such frequent citation, why it uses particular language, why it uses so many acronyms. Then we'll be able to make other choices, and we'll be able to figure out other changes that we need to make to our writing style that will really help us fit in to writing in this particular context, the particular context of psychology. Now, it might be useful to take a step back for a moment behind different genres. For instance, the purpose of a novel is to tell a story, to entertain us. Purpose of a magazine article, also to entertain us, but we also read magazines to keep up to date. So it should inform us, should tell us about new things in the world, make us feel like educated citizens. An instruction manual is kind of a boring technical document, but it has a really clear purpose, which is to help you complete a particular task, such as assemble some IKEA furniture or complete a particular task on your phone. And an academic article has a purpose of giving information, but also to communicate new information, to communicate new knowledge. And that's what academic articles, academic research does. It communicates new research, contributes to a growing body of knowledge. It finds out the answers to things that haven't been studied before. So when we look at our magazine article and our academic article here, we should be looking at things that are difference between informing and entertaining, and informing and making new knowledge. And we see these different purposes if we look at the mission statements for these two different journals or two different genres. For instance, if I look at the mission statement of the Atlantic Monthly, I see a lot of information. This goes on for quite a bit. And I'm seeing words like truth and storytelling, but truth and storytelling combined, honest reporting, exploring, going beyond what happens to what matters. So really a focus on why is this important? Why should we care? What the news means now and what it could mean for the future. So a lot on meaning here. We want to embrace diversity of perspectives. Word story, even though they say that they're more than a story, the word story appears throughout this mission statement. And so suggests that storytelling is part of what's important. I like this last one, immerse ourselves in the world. They want to create a more immersive experience, and they want to engage with the world. So these are some of the goals, the purposes of an article in the Atlantic Monthly. And it wants to look into a wide range of things. Its subject matter is the world and all different kinds of debates, conversations, new ideas, both in the US and around the world. Now, compare this with the mission statement for computer in human behavior. Most journals you can look up what the mission statement is, or the aims and scope. So this is a scholarly journal dedicated to examining computers from a psychological perspective. This is a much shorter mission statement. And one thing that I notice is how often the words psychology, psychiatry appear throughout here. The psychological effects of computers on phenomenon. It focuses on human interactions with computers, not computers per se. This is really different than the Atlantic Monthly, where it had like a really broad range of topics. This is very specific. They say the computers discussed only as a medium through which human behaviors are shaped. And the last sentence here, they're really saying who they imagine using it. Professionals with an interest in psychological aspects of computer use. But even if you don't know a lot of computers, this will still be interesting because this is a journal about psychology. And so it's a very narrow purpose, a very narrow targeted audience. One other thing that I also note is that they want original works, and originality is very important. And this coincides with the purpose of academic research to produce new knowledge. So originality is part of new knowledge. So if we go back and we look at the articles, we can see some of these things reflected in the differences between the two genres. So the very narrow audience of this article, from computers and human behavior, is reflected in the vocabulary. Things like social phobia. Presumably, psychiatrists know what that means. The citations, possibly because this is such a narrow audience. The readers of this article know some of these works, this research. They're familiar with the American Psychiatric Association. Some of the abbreviations throughout here maybe also suggest a very narrow audience, an audience that kind of shares a similar base. Whereas if we go back to the Atlantic Monthly article, we don't see that same level of specificity. It's describing gaming related to phones, to lots of other things, gambling and heroin. Because we have a lot wider audience, we can't assume that same shared knowledge. Now, at this point, I have a few individual insights into some of the differences. My goal should be to get more, to develop more and kind of bring them together. So I'm going to start taking some notes here. With the academic article, we noticed that some differences are narrow audience, originality. I don't like this. I'm going to change it. We noted that it had a more narrow audience from reading the mission statement. We noted this, and a focus on originality. With the magazine article, we noticed several things such as storytelling, an emphasis on story, being up-to-date, wide-ranging, immersing yourself in the world. Now we might find some features that we put under each of these categories. For instance, under narrow audience, I might put something like specific vocabulary or abbreviations, and maybe the citations suggest that this is a community of people that know each other. And under originality, let me go back and look at the article and see what maybe comes out with originality. So as I'm scrolling through here, I'm noticing again the citations. And it occurs to me that citations could maybe be a sign of originality, or that we need citations in order to show that our work is new. And one of the questions I have for you to bring to class discussion is, see if you can make an argument for why citations might be related to originality. Let's see. If we scroll through here, looking at things, so some stuff that I'm noticing, lots of section headings. It's not really, I think, related to originality, though they're describing an experiment, so that topic-wise, it's much more original. And maybe the part of originality is showing things in lots of detail. So I might consider that. And if I scroll through, I start seeing things like the present study is the first to examine this. That's really strong originality. As I'm looking through here, gosh, I'm just noticing like all this precision, all this level of details. So I'm going to go back to my document where I'm taking notes, and maybe under originality, I'm going to also put citations. If they help establish originality, I'm going to put something like first, the use of the word first. And then I'm going to create a new category here for precision. And things for precision include numbers, maybe the vocabulary also goes with precision. Obviously, I need to figure this out. Vocab. Maybe the headings help because that helps us find particular precise information. I'm not sure necessarily where headings go. And so a question that you might want to have when you go to class is, how would all the headings in this academic article, where would you put it? How would you interpret it? How is that related to its purpose and to the people, the needs of the people who read these? For the magazine article, as I scroll through here, I'm seeing lots of names of games, much more. That's maybe part of telling the story or being immersive. I'm noticing the word you a lot, trying to bring us in to this document. Now, just like the academic article had section headings, this has sections too, but they're not numbered. So that makes me think, if I go back to that academic article, maybe that numbering and providing titles for each of the section headings is part of the precision that we want to know exactly where we are and what this section is about. Whereas this, it seems like maybe it's more, here's another section heading here, more content to just tell a story. Also, there are some citations, but these are a lot later in here, and one thing I notice is like specific quotes. So that seems to go with storytelling, telling a story. So let's go back to my Word document. And under storytelling, I'm going to write things like specific detail. And maybe the word you I'll put under immersive. Let's see, quotations seem to go with storytelling, maybe also with immersive here. Up to date, I did see some dates and things, so maybe including current topics, current dates, and maybe under storytelling, I'll put non-specific headers. So those headers that are just dashes like that are there so they don't break up the story. Now, as I'm looking at this, I can draw some conclusions here that if I have a more narrow audience, such as we might have in an academic article, I am freer to use a more specific vocabulary. If precision is important, then I might use more specific numbers, more specific vocabulary, maybe more specific headings to help people maybe manage or organize or make sense of all of that precision. And if storytelling is more important to me, then I might include more details and quotations and less specific headers and more language like you. Now, one thing this word you, which I noticed a bunch in the Atlantic Monthly article, brings to mind, is I noted that in the academic article, the use of the word we, and this kind of surprised me because it occurred several times throughout here. And I wonder how the word we maybe could be related to some of the things that I noted here, because that kind of surprised me. And if I think back at the magazine article, I don't think the author mentions him or herself at all. So there's also in here author self-mentions. And that's kind of interesting. I'm not sure how I would categorize that, but certainly the precision doesn't mean you can't talk about yourself at all in here. So based on these kind of connections, this goal of saying what the purpose or the audience or the function of a text or genre is, and then the features that go with it, this is the purpose of a CGA. And this can help you understand how to write, so that if your goal is to tell a story, you might do some of these things. But if your goal is originality, you might do some of these. Or if it's precision, you might go about doing things a different way. And so a possible thesis statement for this kind of genre analysis could be something like, the academic article, and then I would put the name, the title, uses specific vocabulary citation and detail headings to address the needs of its very narrow readership or its very limited audience who read looking for originality. I would say, by contrast, the magazine article uses specific detail and second-person pronouns, such as you, to create a more immersive story that both entertains and informs. And then I could include some surprising similarities, such as both articles break the text into short sections and short paragraphs, but the magazine sections are more connected. It's easier to see connections. The sections are less, they less have these really big headings. And fluid, and that connects to the immersive story it's trying to tell, while the academic article is more disjointed, which suggests that maybe the readers are more technical, that they are specifically looking for a particular kind of information, and that they don't care if it connects as much. So the goal of your CGA should be to move from specific description and some maybe surface details like this to some connections and some conclusions about why, how that serves, so that we could make inferences, make connections for ourselves, that if I'm writing in a similar context to this, here are some of the things that I might do, some of the ways that I might change or adapt my writing to fit these kinds of needs of my readers.